from the New York Post. It says, a strict new measure that essentially bans abortion in Texas went into effect at midnight despite protests and lawsuits against the harsh mandate. This is the New York Post language anyway, the harsh mandate. The law prohibits women from getting an abortion after a fetal heartbeat can be detected and gives citizens the right to take legal action against doctors or anyone else who helps a woman terminate a pregnancy. Most women who get an abortion in the Lone Star State are at least 6 weeks pregnant and will now be unable to receive the procedure, according to Planned Parenthood and Whole Woman's Health. The Texas bill differs from other similar heartbeat laws nationwide because it bars authorities from enforcing the ban and allows anyone else to take legal action. Under the measure, anyone who successfully sues a doctor or accomplice would be entitled to at least $10,000, which critics claim will flood the courts with opportunistic legal cases. And yes, people who are opportunistically trying to stop babies from being killed. Very, very opportunistic of them. The wide-ranging provision allows suits against patients, nurses, counselors, or even someone who drove a patient to an appointment. So that's the law that went into effect. There was a mad dash by the pro-abortion, pro-death, pro-baby killing side to stop it, and they weren't able to. And now the left is absolutely panicking over this. As you can imagine, the ACLU, which is supposed to be the Civil Liberties Institute, they're supposed to stand for liberty, and you would think the most fundamental and basic liberty is that to live, the right to life. Because if you don't have the right to life, the ability to live, then all of your other rights would seem to be sort of null and void. But they're very pro baby killing. And so they sent out a whole series of tweets. They said the Supreme Court has not responded to our emergency request to block Texas's radical new 6-week abortion ban. The law now takes effect. Access to almost all abortion has just been cut off for millions of people. The impact will be immediate and devastating. And these are the words I've seen the left using in response to this bill, which is expected. Devastating, tragic, unjust, infuriating. Nancy Pelosi called the law a catastrophe, catastrophic, because fewer babies will be killed. That's what they're upset about. It's catastrophic that now we're going to allow more children to live. Cori Bush sent out this tweet. She says, I'm thinking about the black, brown, low-income, queer, and young folks in Texas, the folks this abortion healthcare ban will disproportionately harm. Wealthy white folks will have the means to access abortion. Our communities won't. Now, I'm not sure how an abortion ban will disproportionately affect quote-unquote queer folks. I don't know how that works exactly. But this is the only tune that Cori Bush knows, and so she just hums it every single time. No matter what the issue is, it's always going to be, well, this disproportionately impacts these people. Now, does it disproportionately impact the black community? In a sense, yeah, but what is the disproportionate impact? Because a disproportionate number of black children are aborted. That's true. And so now the disproportionate impact is that more black people will be allowed to live. Okay? There will be more black people in Texas now than there would be without this bill. This bill will have the direct and immediate effect of ensuring, among other things, along with saving so many other babies, but since she brings up these protected classes, it will also have the immediate effect of ensuring that more black people will live in Texas. And Cori Bush, as a black woman, is opposed to that. Which if you're opposed to it, then come out and say it. Just come out and say it. I want these black children who are going to live now, I think they should be dead. I think that they should not be allowed to continue existing. Come out and say it if that's your opinion, because that is your opinion. Now, is this law in Texas, is it in keeping with Roe v. Wade? Supreme Court's going to weigh in on that. And I don't have a whole lot of confidence in what their decision is going to be. I have confidence in maybe two of the justices on the Supreme Court, Thomas and Alito, when it comes to this issue. On the rest, I don't know. But does it violate Roe v. Wade? My answer is, who cares? I don't care if it does. Roe is imaginary. Okay? They located the right to abortion in invisible ink in the Constitution. Or they may as well have. The Roe v. Wade decision may as well have said, well, a fairy came into our chambers and sprinkled pixie dust on the Constitution, and invisible words suddenly were made apparent that said, you have a right to an abortion. That may as well have been the decision, because it is that absurd. Has no basis in reality whatsoever. I mean, again, they located the right to abortion constitutionally within the constitutional right to privacy, which is not a constitutional right. So there's nothing in the Constitution that says right to privacy. And that's what they based the right to abortion in. And even that's not in there. So the right to abortion is 2 degrees removed from the Constitution. It's grounded in constitutional language that does not exist itself. So it's a horrible decision that even if you're an honest pro-abortion person, which is a category of people that I'm not sure actually exists, just as the right to abortion doesn't exist. But if you were, then even you should say, yeah, I think that abortion is good or whatever, I'm in favor of it, but there's no right to it in the Constitution. A couple other points here. As we see the left panicking over this bill in Texas, now that more children will be allowed to live. I've got to make this point again for the millionth time, but it's so important. Because what we're hearing over and over again, and what you'll continue to hear, is that this bill is an attack, it's an assault on reproductive rights. Well, I have to continue to emphasize that it's not an assault on reproductive rights, because this has nothing to do with reproduction. Abortion has absolutely nothing to do with reproduction. Reproduction is a separate issue. Do I think that women have reproductive rights? Of course. I will say this right now, without any hesitation at all. No woman anywhere on earth should be forced to reproduce. Absolutely not. I mean, the thought is atrocious. It's horrifying. The idea that any woman would be forced to reproduce. The good news is that that's not happening in America. Anywhere. Okay? Now, with abortion, what happens is you are killing a human being who has already been produced. Reproduction, birth is not reproduction. When a woman gives birth to a child, this is basic biology that I know is lost on a lot of people these days, especially on the left. Basic biology. Birth is not the reproductive act. Okay? Reproduction is conception. That is when a separate and distinct entity with its own DNA comes into existence. That is reproduction. This being, this entity has been produced in that moment. Now, you could call that this being anything. The correct thing would be human. Baby works also. Person, all those work. But you can even use a euphemism like fetus. Fetus just means offspring in Latin. So sure, it's offspring. Whatever label you want to put, whatever word you want to use. That being exists and has been produced in that moment. Nobody should be forced to conceive. But once conception has happened, the being now exists. Anything you do after that is after reproduction. It is too late to prevent the reproduction of that person. If you are preventing an already produced human from being born, you are not preventing that human being from being reproduced. Any more than if I shoot you in the head before you walk out your front door in the morning, I haven't stopped you from being reproduced. I have just stopped you from changing locations. I have stopped you from emerging from one location into another location. I've maybe stopped you from becoming visible to people outside. But I can't shoot you in the head and then say, hey man, this is my reproductive rights. One other point, really basic. If the government does not have the authority or the right to pass a law like this, if the state government in Texas doesn't have the authority or the right to pass a law saying that you cannot kill human beings that have heartbeats, then government should not exist. There's no argument that I can think of or that I've ever heard that would explain, why we should have a government at all, and yet not one that will protect the most innocent and vulnerable among us. Like, that is the most, if government has any role, then that would be their most fundamental and basic and primary role. To protect the most innocent and vulnerable, people who cannot protect themselves. People who, if the government does not step in and pass laws protecting them, then that's it. Then they'll be killed. If the government is not in the business of doing that, then it shouldn't be in the business of doing anything. If it doesn't have authority and power in that realm, then I don't see how or why it should have authority or power in any realm. So, God bless Texas, and thank God for all the babies that will now be granted I won't even say will be granted the gift of life, because they're already living before the abortion happens, as we discussed. But will be granted the gift of continuing life, and the ability to fully, explore their own potential as human beings. Until a judge comes in and blocks the bill anyway. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.